welcome to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com. I'm talking over the wonderful sounds of Christmas in a Starbucks in Providence, Rhode Island, because it's been that kind of week. Now, the beautiful thing about working remotely, which me and my wife both do, is, you can travel and see family and keep working and all that. But the unbeautiful thing is we're both trying to work remotely in the same tiny Airbnb. So here we are. There's tons of news going on in Gamecock country right now. We're going to kind of try to break that down. I'm going to try to mute it so there's not Christmas horns playing constantly in the background while Alan's talking. But yeah, so tomorrow is signing day for everyone in college football, and it's really been kind of a crazy week thus far. If you go back to last Thursday, there have been 10 welcome homes from Shane Beamer. That's 2024s and 2023s and transfers and all sorts of fun stuff. There are 4 that still haven't announced, and I also think there's going to be more than that ultimately if we're kind of projecting who we've talked to and how everything's gone. So really exciting time. If we go through who's already announced, we have wide receiver Tyshawn Russell. You have several transfers. You have a tight end transfer, Nick Elksons, who I just talked to on a podcast earlier today. You can check that on our YouTube channel and wherever you listen to podcasts. You have running back Mario Anderson Jr., who's a transfer out of Newberry, who I also... Yeah, exactly. So you can find that. We have Yale O-line transfer Nick Gargiulio. You have already said Tyshawn Russell. Man, I guess that's it. Maybe I'm missing someone. It's been kind of a weird day. Then you have several other Gamecock targets that are set to kind of announce their decisions in the next 24 hours. Big Tree Tosin Babalade, who was once committed to South Carolina, recently decommitted. He's kind of down to South Carolina and Maryland. He's supposed to announce his decision this evening. D. Lyman, Elijah Davis, who's a JUCO prospect, he's also set to announce his decision this evening. You got several people signing tomorrow. You got Vakari Swain, who just went on an official visit to Colorado. He's a current South Carolina commitment, but that's kind of one to look for. Did Deion Sanders kind of make a last-minute push there? So there's tons of news over the next 24 hours, and now it's the perfect time to join Rivals and GamecockScoop.com Premium so that you can kind of get the insight before these things happen, and then also a breakdown of several of these recruits after it's done. We'll talk a little bit more recruiting, but I did want to let Alan start to talk a little bit about the bowl game, which is also something that's happening this week.
Oh, yeah, there's a football game in 10 days.
Yeah, so it's they got to do something with this schedule, because now that you have the early signing period and the transfer portal all opening up right here, and then you have the bowl schedule, it's insane. Like, it's kind of hard to keep up if you're just like a reader. It's hard to keep up with everything that's going on. If you look at our website from the past week, I mean, there's like, normally we do 3 or 4 articles per day. There's like 20 articles in the past 3 days because of all the madness that's going on. So, and there's plenty more to come. Anyway, tell us a little bit about the bowl game presser, which you had 10 different players set to talk.
We ended up only getting 8 today. A couple of them had to dip, but still, we had a mega availability today at the football building. So I'll just go with the list of who we had. We had Nick Emanwari, Javon Gwynn, Luke Doty, I'm trying to think, Marcellus Dial. Let me think here. I had it all written down, and now I'm not. This is great audio. I know Nate Atkins, the Carry-On Joiner, Juju McDowell, and then the 8th was Tonka Hemingway. So those were the 8 we had today. I think I'm going to kind of start with the decision stuff we heard. So we had 3 players who their 2023 statuses were in some level of doubt, and we kind of got three different answers there. And I'm curious how you're kind of feeling about any of these. So Luke Doty said he is absolutely, quote, planning on returning to South Carolina next year. That's obviously the heavy favorite to be the starting quarterback as Spencer Rattler goes to the NFL. So he said he's absolutely back. Jovaughn Gwyn, starting right guard, who's, I think most people would say has been the best offensive lineman this year, said he is, quote, most likely going to enter the NFL draft. I think we talked about that last week, that we kind of saw that coming, but that was the first time he had come out and said he's most likely going to do that. And then Dakereon Joyner said he just has not made a decision about 2023 yet. He says he has to do what's best for his daughter. You can take that however you want to take it, but he did say he is going to play in the bowl game. So 3 players, 3 different answers on 2023. Kind of what's your first spin on that?
Yeah, so the Luke Doty news is kind of interesting. There's been a lot of interesting news when we think about the quarterback room over the last few weeks. So you see Spencer Rattler, he signed an NIL deal with like Mercedes or some car company. I can't actually remember off the top of my head right now. So you're like, okay, well, maybe that means he's coming back if he's signing a new deal. Maybe that's enticing enough depending on what his draft status was going to be. But then you have, Luke Doty kind of going ahead and saying like he's committed to the idea of coming back. So then that might indicate that he knows something elsewhere. But maybe not. Maybe he just is, committed to South Carolina no matter what kind of goes down with Rattler. And then you have Lenore Sellers, who is set to announce his decision on Friday. That's a 2023 quarterback. He's down to Syracuse in South Carolina, but as I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I put in my future cast for him to South Carolina. I'm still feeling good about that. So, there's a factor there. And
that makes you still.
And then you have Dante Reno, who is in the 2024 class, but there was some talk about whether or not he would reclassify depending on how everything shakes out. And then you have, the entire quarterback room behind Rattler and Doty with 4-star Tanner Bailey. You have Jaden Daniels, who was kind of a walk-on, but we talked about how he was an underrated walk-on because he got kind of lost in the mix of that 2020 COVID year. So really, you're looking at a lot of potential
in the mix there.
Braden Davis too, who had a nice spring game last year. So you got to feel pretty good about the South Carolina quarterback room right now, but you also got to think with all of those guys in the mix, at some point something's going to break, right? Like all those guys want to play somewhere at some point. So also it wouldn't surprise me if we start to see some defections, I guess, to the portal as all of that starts to play out. The others that you mentioned,
probably gone, he said.
Yeah, that was not particularly surprising to us, but definitely a big blow for that O-line group.
I think
which is
my take on that is you're already losing Eric Douglas and Dylan Wadham. So you're down your entire right side of the offensive line, and really just your 2 left spots are all that's left on the line next year. That's obviously that's big. That couples in with what we talked about on our last podcast with the 2 O-line decommits. I know, you just said one of them might be back in the fold tomorrow. We'll see. But that's suddenly the right side of the offensive line is a very pressing concern for 2023.
Yeah, and that's why you see them getting O-line in the portal. Like we said, they just landed Yale O-lineman Nick Gargiulio. And it won't surprise me if they target some more O-linemen in the portal, especially because, you were kind of depending on Isaiah Jada, JUCO O-lineman, to come in and start to give them snaps immediately too. And of course he decommitted last week. That's going to be something interesting to watch. There is still some depth behind them with experience, but going to have to rebuild that line a little bit going into next year, either through the portal or, hope that you've been developing those guys that we haven't heard from too much yet because they've redshirted and been behind these veteran players.
Yeah, and then the third one there who's just wouldn't commit to anything either way today was Dakereon. Well, he committed to playing in the bowl game, but he didn't say about 2023 either way. Is Dakereon Joyner, last year's bowl hero?
Yeah, we talked in the Slack channel about that a little bit, and to me, it seems like the best move for him to stick around, just given his like utility sort of skill set? Is it possible that he could have been utilized better this year at times? Yes. I mean, we saw it develop a little bit better later in the year in Tennessee. It's a game where you're getting a lot more one-off snaps on a series or whatever, which I think would have been a nice mix in, especially in some of those games where they literally couldn't get anything going on offense, like you think Florida or Missouri. But also to Karen Joyner, like the fan base loves him. I'm sure because the fan base loves him, that makes him have some nice NIL deals. I can't think of the specifics of what he's got going on right now.
I know he's got the Duke's Mayo one from last year, but
so yeah, do you want to go rebuild your brand somewhere else, or do you want to stay the place where you already have a pretty established brand, and then maybe you can have continue to develop as a receiver and work your way into a draft spot next year, maybe?
Yeah, I think in terms of like draft and stuff, I'm not an NFL scout, obviously. It's one of those. In college, we as people value versatility a lot, but I think a lot of those NFL guys want, what position can you play? What are you going to do? I think NFL people might look at Dakereon Joyner more as a tweener than anything. Like, is he a receiver? He play a little bit of running back. He's probably not a quarterback in the NFL, but I don't know if that helps him or hurts him in terms of that. I also don't know if he's going to be here next year to add to that. But those were kind of the big future-looking things we got today. I'm trying to think. And then we had Nate Atkins kind of dropping a subtle hint that other people who are not tight ends are playing tight end in practice right now, which obviously they need without Jaheim Bell, Austin Stogner, and Trayvon Kenyon. And I posed the question to you. Who on South Carolina's roster, who is not a tight end, would you like to see out there catching passes, doing tight end stuff in a bowl game?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Wyatt Campbell, obviously, who's gotten some work there, but then he also had a season injury, so we don't really know what his status is looking like. Perry McCarty in the Slack channel mentioned Trey Jones, who is obviously normally an O-lineman, but is pretty athletic as an O-lineman. I don't know if he has hands or not. Yeah, Tonka Hemingway. Yeah, I mean, we know that he has hands, right?
That's what I'm saying, man. He's got a big body. He's got hands. Like, don't ask me why, but I feel like Jordan Burch could probably do a job at tight end. Like, that's obviously not going to happen. I'm just trying to be funny here. Just what would you think would be funny to see in a bowl game? Like tight end Kai Kroger? He's got everything else.
Well, of course, with Jordan Burch and with Hemingway, like you have a little bit of an issue on the D line too. So they're obviously going to be used.
Expect Jordan Burch or Kai Kroger to play tight end in the bowl game. I just want to put that out there. I'm trying to think of ways this could be funny. If there actually are people other than Atkins playing tight end, who?
Yeah, man.
I actually do think Trey Jones is not a bad shout there.
Yeah, I guess I'm being too realistic with it. I should just go with Kai Kroger and
call everything else, man.
No, but I am trying to realistically think, like, is there a big-bodied receiver that could slide down? Maybe Xavier Legette, but I mean, he's not going to be very good as an inline blocker.
Yeah, that would be like passing down, so you line him up there maybe, but could see that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it'll be interesting. It's probably going to be Wyatt Campbell or Trey Jones, I guess, but it's going to be really, really interesting, and that's something
that you would never think of. Maybe Sherrod Green is secretly the next Rob Gronkowski, and none of us have figured it out yet.
Hey, that would be good for his pro career for sure. But that was something I was talking about earlier with Nick Elks. Man, why am I struggling with his name so much? Elksness, who is the transfer tight end from Florida. I tell you what, he's fired up, one, about beating Florida from South Carolina. And also, yeah, he realizes that there is a pretty obvious opportunity. That's why he said he targeted South Carolina in the portal. And here's a quick teaser. He's not the tight end that you're going to see announce over the next week or whatever. So keep your eyes peeled there. But so you got Cameron Sandlin and Connor Cox both already verbally committed. You got Nick Elksness, and then they had like 5 tight ends on campus this week between transfers like Trey Knox. You had Miami commitment. Oh man, what is his name right now?
Well,
Reed
and then-
McKeska. Reed
Very good.
McKeska is his name. And then I think you had another transfer on campus that was a Western Kentucky
Yes.
player. So
Um,
yeah, you had a lot of people there, and something else I talked about with Nick was the fact that your offensive coordinator now was a former
tight ends coach. I was
former
gonna
tight ends
say, yeah.
coach. And then something I actually forgot about was Beamer is also a former tight ends coach. So you definitely have
Georgia,
a coaching staff that's trying to make sure that position gets emphasized.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I didn't even think of that with Beamer. Yeah, he was on Kirby Smart's staff coaching tight ends, and some of the great tight ends they've had there. That actually does bring me to my next point too from the pressers, talking about logins a little bit. I don't know, I think 3 or 4 players were asked about it. The general kind of feel or the answers on logins were, we haven't talked a lot of ball yet, but we really like him as a person. It came up that he greeted every single player on the team individually, including the defensive players. I thought that was noteworthy. And that was kind of there wasn't a lot of like football stuff. This is what he wants to do. Judy McDowell said he's excited about his scheme. That was one kind of tidbit on football stuff, but the general vibe seemed to just be good person, and we're getting to football stuff, I guess, probably after the bowl game, because they're doing their own stuff without logins right now for the Gator Bowl.
I feel like I should just give commentary on each Christmas song that's blasting in my ear while I'm doing this right now. And we got the like Hawaiian Christmas song. I can't even remember what it's
We
called.
had like an
right now.
EDM version of Jingle Bells in Greenville Saturday on the loudspeaker for men's basketball. That was different.
Yeah, so stay tuned for my reviews. I hate this song. That's my review on this one.
Nobody breaks it down like you.
But yeah, so I think that's kind of the vibe I got when I was talking to both Mario Anderson and Nick Elkins about Dowell Loggins. Is like he's still pretty hands off right now, but he's very personable, and people seem to trust his passion and his vision, which is what recruiting is all about at the end of the day. So that's interesting. Do we have any guesses on who's calling the plays in the bowl game? Or are we still just like we'll keep it quiet, I guess?
I don't have any like information that I didn't have last time we talked. I mean, they had one open practice last Friday, which I guess we could hit on some stuff in a second with that too. But not really. I don't have a guess. I do think it's going to be a game plan by committee type of deal. And then I don't even know. I mean, I feel like someone to do with the passing game makes more sense, just given the attrition at running back right now. I don't know if that means Justin Stepp. I don't know if that means Jody Wright. But you probably don't want him doing it though with the tight ends situation where it is. Maybe I feel like Stepp or maybe Mo Hardesty makes the most sense, just given the situation of who's left. But I do think it'll be game planned by committee, and whoever's actually holding that play sheet. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do still agree with, I guess, Beamer's decision to just kind of keep that quiet. There's no point in giving your opponent any advantage there. All right, as we start to look ahead to the bowl game, we know that the team is going to report to Jacksonville the day after Christmas.
No, they had Christmas night. They're practicing first the morning of the 26th.
Right, which means you're reporting to Jacksonville on Christmas night as well. And yeah, we're going to have full updates on whatever you're allowed to attend, which it sounds like is most things for bowl week throughout that week. So definitely keep it posted to GamecockScoop.com for that. Anything else from the press conferences today as they're beginning to sort of preview the opponent or talk about what these last couple of weeks have been like as they've gone home, come back, started to transition back into football mode?
Yeah, I think we can get into more like actual Gator Bowl stuff and finally get to talk about a football game probably next time we're back here with everything else going on. My one funny note from the presser today is I would encourage all of you to watch Juju McDowell. He had some really funny stuff about the Clemson game, about some of the post game, about some stuff he heard from his family and some friends who are Clemson fans. Just watch the video. You don't even listen to it. His facial expressions were priceless a couple of times. Just watch the Juju McDowell video of his presser today. It'll be worth your time, I promise.
Yeah, I did see a couple of those, right? Like his family said that he was slow because he got run down.
Tackle on the one on that down, like over the top pass. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I also saw, I think it was to carry on Joyner, but I could be wrong, said that Xavier Thomas unfollowed him on Instagram or something after the loss. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what the rivalry is all about.
People today who we haven't talked to since Clemson. So there's a decent amount of stuff on that. The win, a couple plays. We had Nick Eamon-Worry. He was talking about the fumble recovery on the Antonio Williams muff, the punt. So there was a good bit of Clemson stuff here too. And hey, I don't think South Carolina fans mind that right now.
Yeah, if we want to break one more note, Anthony Rose is good to go for the bowl game. There was some thought that maybe academics was keeping him on like a gray shirt situation or a red shirt situation. But he will be eligible to play in the bowl game, which will be useful if
speaking of that actually brings another good point. Since we last were on here, the NCAA dropped the 4-game redshirt, or they didn't drop it, but they said that if postseason doesn't count towards that, meaning that Luke Doty or any player on South Carolina who's played in exactly 4 games this year, but Doty's the headliner there, obviously, can play in the Gator Bowl without losing a year of eligibility. That was something Beamer and the staff were being very tight about. If you guys remember at the end of the Florida game, they let Rattler play the whole way, even in a blowout, because they didn't want to burn Doty's red shirt that day. Well, that's not a problem anymore. If something happens to Spencer, if his helmet pops off and he has to come out for one play, if they have some really weird Luke Doty trick play package, whatever that might look like, Luke Doty's allowed to play this bowl game now and still have still not lose a year of eligibility, which is new since we last talked. He said, actually today, he said that after he played his 4th game, Beamer called him into his office very directly, like, all right, what are we doing here? We got to figure this out. You want to play more? What's the deal? So I thought that was interesting, the way the staff approached that, because they were clearly careful about Doty's red shirt, thinking with an eye towards next year. And now it's not a problem. So you can see Luke Doty in this bowl game.
Yeah. And again, like no matter what way the Rattler situation sort of plays out, getting him more years of eligibility is going to be essential, because I think once he's gone, if he's developed behind the scenes the way that we continue to hear that he has, he's going to be next man up, and it'd be nice to have him for more than just 1 year, if possible. And yeah, that seems like a perfect example of how the reason that all these players seem to love this staff so much is the kind of like straightforward, genuine nature of it. That's another thing that I've been talking about with several recruits over the last couple of days. Is the thing that stood out to them about South Carolina throughout the process was just kind of like the no BS attitude, I guess, of the coaches. So that's right in line with.
Yeah, that's kind of my takes from the presser today. We'll have Shane Beamer tomorrow. Well, that'll mostly be signing day related. And then Thursday, we have Clayton White and the newly extended Pete Lembo. No OC, obviously, for the bowl game, since there is no OC, but we'll have the other 2 coordinators Thursday. So stick around on Gamecock Scoop for updates on both of those.
Yeah, and then did we get any injury updates today or during his call-in show yesterday? I know Josh.
Yeah, so we got a couple Carolina calls last night. Josh Fan is, quote, very, very, very – what did I have here? There were 3 varies in there. Very, very, very doubtful to play in the bowl game. If you remember, he had the knee injury against Clemson. And then Devontae Reed apparently got banged up, and it's a we'll see situation, according to Beamer. That I'm working off the assumption that Josh Fan's not going to play in the bowl game, because whenever Beamer's been like he's doubtful all year, that's meant they're not playing. So, and look, stuff happens. They're 10 days away. They get to Jacksonville. Dakereon Joyner was not supposed to play quarterback in a bowl game last year. Like, things happen. But if you assume that means no Van, we didn't see Jalen Brooks at practice last week. Don't know what the deal is with that yet. That was not brought up last night either. Antoine Wells Jr. actually was reported he was in a minor car accident going to practice Friday. That's why he wasn't there. But he has said he's come out and said he's fine. He's playing in the bowl game. So you're probably looking at Wells, Amarian Brown, Xavier Legette as like a receiver trio for the bowl game. That's probably what you're looking at right now at this point, right? Am I missing anyone?
No, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, good to hear that Wells is back. We still don't really have any confirmation on next year for him, right?
No, we don't.
Just kind of waiting.
And then on the defensive side, if Devontae Reed's not going to be able to play, obviously Emanwari and DQ Smith get a lot of reps. You're down 2 corners with Cam Smith and Darius Rush. So Dial, I mean, I don't know if that means more linebacker packages. That means you're going to get like, this is a baby. This is more of a Bam Martin Scott game, right? He's played a little bit of nickel too this year. That's interesting how that secondary is kind of, going to kind of Tetris itself in there, for lack of a better term. Maybe O'Donnell Fortune might have to play some more in this game if Devontae Reed's out, especially. So that's kind of the injury.
Yeah, and I think that was an important part about Anthony Rose potentially being able to play. Also, Emery Floyd, who is a freshman, he got mentioned today in the press conference too. So, yeah, it's time for those guys to step up. Bowl practice is usually a time that you use to get your younger players kind of ready for next year. That's one of the big advantages of it, is you get an extra month of practice that non-bowl teams don't get. So yeah, I would expect to continue to see the freshmen step up in the secondary like they have been all year, and maybe even a couple new faces there.
There was another welcome home while we were recording, by the way. I'm assuming you saw it, but
I didn't. Was it 2023? Yeah, 2023 welcome home
from 15 minutes ago.
Like I said when I opened the show, this is not something that is finished. I'm not going to speculate, because if I speculate, I'm going to probably accidentally hit the person that it was. But if I'm just giving you some storylines to look at as we head into the early signing period, which starts tomorrow, I've already mentioned a couple, right? You got Tosin Babalade, who's making his decision on whether or not he's going to recommit or go to Maryland. You have Reed McCaskill, who was like a flip candidate from Miami to South Carolina. We don't know yet, but he was just on an official visit with the Gamecocks. We still got other people that they were targeting in the pup portal. The Western Kentucky tight end that I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. There was an Oklahoma State running back, Dominique Richardson, that was in town this weekend. So yeah, there's a lot to look at, and then really there could be some sort of surprises, but really the only like sort of fear of flipping candidate to look for at the moment is Vicari Swain, who just went and met Dion out in Colorado. So that would have an impression on me. So you can't. But yeah, I mean, South Carolina's obviously had a long, strong relationship with Swain, so we'll have to see how that goes. I know it was pretty cold out in Colorado last weekend, so if that
you've got Dion in your backyard now.
Yeah, no, that'll be fun to check out. But yeah, several other storylines heading into the early signing day tomorrow. Again, I promise you're going to have some welcome homes revealed in the next 24 hours. So definitely keep an eye on Gamecock Scoop. We'll have those put out as soon as the kid announces it. We don't do that here where we sort of take away someone's thunder there. But lots of really exciting things for South Carolina fans right now.
Yeah, for sure. And then, once you kind of get past signing day tomorrow, you go into the weekend, you go into Christmas time. I don't know if we're going to be back before Christmas. Hope all y'all have a good, safe holidays out there. If we're not, then it's Gator Bowl week. Practice starts the 26th next week in Jacksonville, and then it's on through the 30th.
Yeah. And then one other quick reminder, maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. Just because someone has entered the transfer portal does not mean that there is no way that they're coming back. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. maybe everyone that enters the transfer portal for South Carolina eventually does leave. But I think a lot of times people forget that. And so through the madness of this week, while their welcome homes going out left and right and all that, keep that in mind.
Until you see a player announce their commitment to another school, they're not completely gone.
Right. Which Jaheim Bell, I think we already mentioned this. Jaheim Bell went to Florida State. We're thinking Gilbert Edmond seems to be leaning that direction as well. Florida State.
Austin Stogner, Oklahoma too.
Yeah. So, but otherwise, the other names that are in the portal have not, at least not that I've seen, announced anything yet. So, keep that in mind. Anything else before we get out of here?
I think that about covers it. Just keep it up with signing day. There's 2 basketball games the next 2 days at Colonial Life Arena. If y'all are into that too, if you don't have enough Gamecocks in your life right now, have a Merry Christmas. And we'll see you back at probably from a hotel room in Jacksonville. Probably next time I'm doing this.
Yeah, that sounds great. And on Gamecock Scoop tomorrow, we're gonna have tons of great early signing day content, both breaking down any surprises to you guys at least, and also just breaking down the class. Like most of the class is going to sign tomorrow, so we can start to more formally look ahead, see who we think might contribute into next year, all that fun stuff. So keep it locked on GamecockScoop.com. Until next time. Also, sorry for all the background noise this time. We'll do better. Sometimes you get stuck in a Starbucks, and you just gotta wing it. Until next time, this has been the GamecockScoop.com podcast. We'll see you.